Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a very special guest in studio with us. I'm a big fan of her music. It's Nellie McKay. She's been heard. Her music has been heard on Mad Men, Boardwalk Empire, Weeds, Grey's Anatomy, NCIS, Nurse Jackie, and she's appeared on TV shows like The Late Show with David Letterman, Conan Ferguson, The View, which is where I saw her first. Nellie has made numerous radio appearances on NPR's Mountain Stage, A Prairie Home Companion, E-Town, and Miriam McPartland's Piano Jazz. She's multi-talented. Nellie McKay, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you, Jimmy.
It's really a big thrill to have you. Now, here's your latest album. So now the first album that you did that I was aware of was Get Away From Me.
Right.
That's what it was called. What a hilarious name. And how did you come up with the name for Get Away From Me? Are you bored with that question already?
No, not a bit. Well, there were a lot of albums that came out that year that seemed very friendly. It wasn't just Nora Jones' Come Away With Me. It was Jane Monheit, Come Dream With Me. Triumph the Insult Comic Dog had Come Poop With Me. Sinatra had Come Dance With Me. Ashanti had Come With Me. And Get Away From Me, though, wasn't just a riff on that. It was also already, there was a surveillance state, there was the feeling of the government encroaching onto our lives, and it's only grown since then, so good title.
Wow, look at you. He's talking to a musician. She mentions the surveillance state in her first answer. God bless you. That's
I think about it all the time.
Do you really?
Well, you can't take your cell phone anywhere. I mean, part of the reason for having a cell phone is safety. I don't want the government to know everywhere I go.
Well, they do.
Yeah,
They do.
if you have it with you. No, it's a lot of times I'm not in touch. It hurts my work, but I just don't want to be tracked.
Yeah, you turn it off?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, I don't even take it because now I have the Smarty Pants one, and so you can't. It'll still track you even if you turn it off. So
yes,
just leave
you have
it
to
at
take
home.
the battery out for it not to track you.
Right.
Yeah,
So I just pretend I have a gun in my pocket.
So, let me just give you some quotes that people have said about your music. Thanks to Nellie McKay, the Great American Songbook has a living, breathing present as well as a glorious past. That's from the Boston Globe. McKay comes on as a Harlem Holly Golightly, a social activist with a disarming mastery of pop vernacular. That's from the LA Times. A sly, articulate musician who sounds comfortable in any era. That's the New York Times. And so ambitious, intriguing, and clever. That's Billboard magazine. And it's, you do so many things. Your music, you have a beautiful voice. You're, a virtuoso on the piano. And you write such great music that it hooks you, right? It hooked me. And here's your latest. Here's your latest album. It's called Nellie McKay's Sister Orchid. So now this is you doing some standards from the 30s and 40s, correct?
That's right, yeah.
And so how did you come up with the idea and how did you come up with the name?
Well, I think partly it extends into the 50s. I believe Small Day Tomorrow was written by Fran Landesman and the late Bob Dore. I believe that was in the 50s. And so I think there's a film noir feel to the album, which partly came out of the first Cold War and the first wave of McCarthyism. And now we are in a similar space, which I think a lot of people don't know it. I mean, my mother grew up, her dad built a fallout shelter, and my Nana was happy because that was a day off from him beating her. He was so worn out from building the fallout shelter. So now, though, a whole group of kids grew up with that trauma of perpetually being afraid of the bomb. And now people seem fairly oblivious to it. They're actively encouraging this enmity towards Russia. It's more dangerous than the first one. You have the Western Front, you have the situation in Syria, and then you have Asia, with the pivot to Asia, where it's been filled with U.S. military activity. So I think it's about time that we brought back more film noir and that kind of hey, if the end is near, let's just stay out all night.
So do you see us having meaning people who think like us, who recognize the danger of the current climate that we're living in? When do we get our good night and good luck? When does our hero come along to turn the establishment or most of the people in mainstream America to understanding that this is the new McCarthyism instead of what they're thinking, which is this is a good thing to get Trump?
Right. Well, only a genuine populist left can defeat the right, and that has been effectively crushed. So a friend of mine who's worked in D.C. for a long time, he said even Bernie is a quick fix. I mean, it basically comes down to communities, and local organizing,
So you think, what I have said previously, which is also, I found out, which is what Bernie said in the early 90s, I have a video of, is that there needs to be a progressive movement outside the Democratic Party.
Of course.
And
It's an abusive relationship. The only pragmatic way is out.
so when you say it's an abusive relationship between progressives and the Democratic Party, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
And how so?
Well, they're bought and paid for.
Yeah.
And I went to 13 states for Bernie. When I started, I thought I was going to vote for Clinton at the end. I'm sure you didn't, but I didn't know anything. I was pretty out to lunch. As you said, Obama puts the left to sleep, and I didn't know so many things. I wasn't properly paying attention. And I had always believed in my life that in the lesser of two evils, perhaps some progress can be made. And that isn't true when you take a comprehensive view.
Yes, that in fact we go backwards every time.
Right.
So every time you vote lesser of two evils, in my lifetime, we've gone backwards.
Right.
So that's very, very astute of you. Well,
there's an article in Black Agenda Report called "How Obama is the Most Effective Evil," and that's a pretty good article.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I'd like to read that.
Yeah.
Well, I just found out 2 days ago that Barack Obama dropped more bombs than George Bush did.
Wow, yeah. Well, I know he launched 10 times more drone strikes.
Yeah.
And one of the primary missiles of the drone program is the Hellfire missile, which is a thermobaric weapon, which sucks the air out of its victims' lungs, collapsing the internal organs. And when you keep in mind that when they did a study of drone strikes, that they found nearly 90% of those killed are civilians. I mean, when you actually reckon with what the government does. But for years, I didn't just vote Democratic. I campaigned for them, and I sent them money. I remember in high school, I went to a largely Republican high school, making up rap songs about Bill Clinton, and all the attendant rhymes. I can still remember my list of rhymes. I mean, I just thought the Democrats are the better guys, at least.
Yes, I was right there with you until I read that book, Listen Liberal by. Why am I blanking? Thomas Frank.
Oh, I must read that.
So that was what made me like I am.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'll check that. I mean, of course, there's Death of the Liberal Class.
Right. Oh, sure. I mean, if you read that too, Chris Hedges.
Yeah.
The striking failure of the Democratic. It's not a failure, by the way. It's not a flaw. It's a design.
Right. Of course.
So they're designed to suppress progress,
right.
Progressivism, and they're there to keep the status quo. And the idea. Do you agree with that? With the theory that the Democratic Party would rather lose to a Republican than win with a progressive?
Of course. Of course. Well, I had a friend, I called all my celebrity friends, who I'm always a little scared of. So this was the one time I called this friend. I had their number, and I said, please, can you endorse Bernie? And they said, no, I'm going to wait till the big one. And I thought, this is the big one, because I knew by then. And but people don't see the vast continuity between administrations. I mean, and with identity politics, which definitely they affect your life, but it's become completely clouded. I mean, I kind of think, what are those things? Are they fallopian tubes or a uterus? The thing that has two parts.
I think it's a fallopian
It's almost
tube.
like a pair of glasses, and you can't see anything past them anymore. And I imagine it's the same for people who are not white, who are not Christian, who are not straight. That it becomes all. It just becomes this perpetual navel gazing, and you don't realize that, say, Obama started a program that would invest $1 trillion in more usable nukes. Over 30 years. I mean, it's that affects you. You don't have control over your body if you're going to be blown to bits.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. People don't know. He didn't launch a $1 trillion investment in education over 30 years.
Right.
He didn't launch a $1 trillion investment in prenatal care, or he invested $1 trillion in usable nuclear bombs.
Right. Prompting one general to say smaller means they're more thinkable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everyone says Trump's the crazy guy, which he seems to be. But if they really believe that he was, it's weird that they keep voting to give him more surveillance power and more bombs.
Right.
Isn't
right.
that's kind of a contradiction, right?
You would think. You would think. But I canvassed so many neighborhoods for Bernie, and I met people in Detroit who were voting against NAFTA, and I canvassed a lot of primarily black neighborhoods because this country's still very segregated. And aside from Detroit, where it was mostly Trump was the fuck you vote. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the fuck you vote. That pretty much the consensus I would get from Harlem to Compton to parts of South Carolina was that Trump is crazy and so is this world. He takes the mask off. He's not a lie anymore. Zora Neale Hurston has a quote, something to the effect of, I would rather know the truth than continue to climb on the wagon of wishful illusions. I think that all the time. I mean, that's the Democratic Party. It's just, and once you see the lie, it's so obscene. You were at the convention. I was at the convention. It was a funeral pyre. I mean, it was just, there are songs I sing and I'm still looking at that stage now. Just wishing, if the ukulele had the ability to, I never want to hurt anybody. I just want to make them go away. But, it's just, you see it for what it is. And the lie of it is too much to bear.
It is too much to bear, and people, it was really disheartening to see the Democratic Party, who I supported my whole life, kick a black woman off the stage, Nina Turner, and replace her with a billionaire who instituted stop and frisk in New York.
I know.
That guy's welcome on stage.
I know.
But Nina Turner, it was just, and so do you feel let down by Bernie?
Well, I know so many people who invested so much. I mean, beyond mere money. There are millions of people who invested hundreds of millions of dollars in a primary that was decided from the beginning. But I also know people who gave so much more of themselves beyond that. I mean, a friend of mine who was the first woman in the Construction Workers Union in Minnesota, in the House Painters Union, she went to 5 states for Bernie. She went into debt. She really believed he had a chance. She was here in Southern California. A friend of mine who was in the Vietnam War. He's a veteran. He campaigned for a year. We were everywhere. We drove around Indiana looking for the cheapest smokes. He's got one pair of overalls. He was out working 17-hour days along with the college kids. He's got a bad leg, but he believed and he wanted this so badly. You're going to take a year of his life and then not only demand that he vote for the Democrats, but shame and blame and smear and attack him for not doing that. He sold his truck to go on the road for Bernie. Is the DNC going to buy him his truck back?
No.
I don't think so. No.
They don't even want him to vote.
No.
They don't even want to let him be voting in the primary.
And you said it. You said that they don't just not fear us. They don't just ignore us. They actively mock and malign us.
And work against us, right? So what's happening right now in all the Democratic primaries across the country is they're cheating the progressive, right? We've seen it. Nancy Pelosi cheated. They've cheated in Houston. They're cheating everywhere. Yeah. And this isn't new. Right, so the undercover tape from Colorado with Steny Hoyer that The Intercept published, showed you that he says, "Our decision has been made before the people get to vote."
Right,
the party has made a decision,
right,
and it doesn't involve you,
right.
And so I feel dumbfounded that Bernie, who spent his whole life as an independent, then sheepdogs people into that party that is actively working against him. What do you say to that?
At this point, I mean, Chris Hedges said he would consider voting for Bernie if he was an independent. But to go through that primary again, I can't do it again. And I know other people. I don't want to put my friends through this. I mean, the dearest people, none of whom had money, who were out there knocking doors, teachers here in Southern California. I mean, my friend in Iowa, they take you in. My friends in South Carolina, they put not only me, but my rambunctious dog, my friends in South Carolina left a copy of Lies My Teacher Told Me on my bedside table as if we had any time. People are sleep deprived in a primary. They don't have time for this. And it was the most diverse group of people I'd ever worked with in my life, and I grew up in Queens. So, I mean, it was just, and the way the corporate media is arranged, and the viciousness of it, and the viciousness of the smears, he can't go through that party again.
He is. He's gonna. And speaking of the media, it was the Bernie campaign revealed the corruption inside the corporate lefty media.
Right.
Amazingly, and then WikiLeaks revealed the rest of it. What Hillary Clinton had the Pied Piper strategy, which then their minions in the lefty press pushed, which
Right.
is just mind blowing that they would do that. Did you feel the same way? Like it really to watch MSNBC cover Bernie or not cover him, and in favor of an empty podium for Trump, that's not hyperbole. They literally did that.
Right.
Was it as distasteful for you as it was for me?
Oh, it was
to watch that?
Oh, it was horrific. I mean, I remember just bawling. I mean, just the emotion of that campaign. We were in Canton, Ohio, and later I learned how politically how much political corruption is in Ohio. It's similar to Nevada, I think, in a way, and it's one of the most where if you follow the money in that state, you
Right.
know, and I just. What do you call it? Projectile tears. It's just because we had just had Michigan, and that was such,
huge.
Flying through the night, getting the last people, trying to avoid the people with leprechauns on their doors because they were always a little mean to you for some reason. I'm sure it's not all people, but in Detroit, for some reason,
really,
you wanted to avoid the leprechauns, especially the Tinsley leprechauns. But we were flying, trying to get the last people out till the polls at 8 p.m. We were in this beautiful campaign space with artwork, and again, it was such a group of people from all walks of life, and when he won, it was so, I was just flying, and then when, to continue on, and after that, the smears got ramped up.
Yeah, of course, because he was a threat.
Yeah.
Because he won something.
Yeah.
And so, well, it's fine. First of all, I think is it okay you keep talking about this stuff?
Oh no, I love it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying there are things you keep touching on. Oh well, I mean, for instance, in the DNC lawsuit, when the lawyers for the Democrats said something to the effect of, "We have the right to pick candidates in smoke-filled back rooms if we wish to." I mean,
right. So they don't, and they haven't changed. By the way, so they had that reform committee. And they didn't reform anything.
Right.
And what have you followed that at all? The reform committee?
I mean, a little bit, but
they still have super delegates.
I know.
That's amazing. Can you imagine? That's like something you would think Russia would do.
Right.
Like they would rig their. Oh, we have super delegates.
Right. Right.
Their vote is worth 10,000 more than you. It's important that they know better, Jimmy.
Yeah.
So that's what we do here, and everybody's like, "Yep, sounds good."
Right.
It's like to lose an election to a political novice and then blame another country.
Right. Right.
is what the Democrats are doing, and now they're suing.
Right.
Instead of offering a program to help people, they're going to file a lawsuit.
Right.
I couldn't be more let down. And
but against WikiLeaks, that's the lawsuit you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, I know. I was waiting for. I thought, that's something I've missed. No, of course.
Yeah, they're suing the WikiLeaks for doing journalism.
Right.
They do it. Did you see the movie The Post?
I didn't want to.
Why didn't you want to see it?
Because I mean, at this point, the idea that Hollywood, they've turned their back. In Goodfellas, when Paulie turns his back.
Yeah, I got to give you. Here's $3,000. No, I got to turn my back on you.
That's right. And he says, "This is it for a lifetime of hard work. This is Henry." That's what happened. The working class got what? A certificate of appreciation. And the coasts turned their back. The professional class, and now they blame them. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to do my show tonight because who buys tickets, But I mean, but it's just, there's no future there, You know, we weren't just fighting for a future to believe in, we were fighting for a future at all.
Right.
You know?
I know.
With this level of corruption, look at one of the existential threats is climate change. The number one driver of climate change is animal agriculture. It's not just because it contributes more greenhouse gas than all global transportation combined. It's because it's just the number one driver of deforestation and the the poisoning of the oceans. So you're eliminating the biomass that absorbs carbon. So all that's getting pumped into the atmosphere, and there's nothing to absorb it. If you don't take money out of politics, both parties are bought and paid for. You're not going to stop. You're not going to stop the subsidizing of the meat and dairy industries. You're not going to stop the wholesale corporate takeover of the levers of power in this country. And you're not going to incentivize a plant-based diet or reforestation. So, do you want a planet to live on? Because you have to get out of the system.
So that's what I keep telling people. And when people were shaming me to vote for a corporatist warmonger who promised to export fracking around the world and had a public position and a private position, and she let billionaires know that, but not the rest of us, I just couldn't. And people shamed me for not being able to participate in that anymore.
Right.
And I said that, no matter who wins this election, meaning Trump or Hillary, I'm going to have to fight both parties for a living wage. I'm going to have to fight both parties on climate change. I'm going to have to fight both parties on ending these wars. I'm going to have to fight both parties on free college, Medicare for all.
Right.
The fight doesn't end. The fight starts.
Oh, no. Because of the crime bill of the 90s, you have 250,000 to 500,000 people who are now sitting in cages that are mentally ill. Half of those were put there on nonviolent drug crimes.
Yep.
And there was a big push to have Obama pardon, at the very least, nonviolent drug offenders. Didn't happen.
He wouldn't even reschedule marijuana.
I know. I know. My friend, I was saying, why couldn't he just do that with the pardons at the end? Why couldn't he just do that last thing before leaving? He said, why should he work at being a hero when everyone gives it to him for free?
Yes. I mean, he left office pushing the TPP.
Right. I know.
And they wonder why nobody would vote for Hillary in Michigan or Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's mind-blowing, right?
I know. And the TPP would have established a corporate tribunal that would have taken to task any piece of legislation that affected their bottom line.
Right. So so it takes away sovereignty from United States citizens.
Right.
And it gives it to an unelected corporate body.
Right.
And I think people caught on to that.
Right.
Which is why Trump actually repealed it, but he's going to try to pass something similar to it.
Oh, it's different roots of the same scam. Yeah. I mean, it's profoundly undemocratic. It's profoundly undemocratic to say that you have to vote one way. It's crazy. It is a way of suppressing free speech. One way of expressing yourself is through your vote. You have one vote. You're one person. You have the right to run for office if you wish. You have the right to campaign for who you wish, and that is sacred. And don't let anyone take that away from you.
No, they will. It's not sacred to everybody else. No. Everybody else is like, you owe your vote to the Democratic Party. And I'm like, what Nina Turner says, any blue just won't do.
No.
And I don't owe my vote to anybody. No. What a politician is supposed to do, if they don't have the votes necessary to win a race, they're supposed to go campaign and get those votes.
Right.
And if you're not in the business of getting votes, maybe electoral politics isn't for you.
Right.
And Hillary Clinton did not go to Wisconsin and Michigan. Right. And she lost those states.
Right.
I mean, she lost the goddamn state to Bernie to begin with.
Right.
What did that tell her? Nothing, apparently.
Right.
So where do you see this ending up? Do you see so how are you going to, how are you navigating politics these days?
My same friend from DC said, I know what's going to happen with Kucinich. And we put out a thing for Kucinich, but the inevitable happened, And
that he got smeared? He got smeared. Huffington Post. Yeah. Oh, Janice Kucinich ties to the butcher Assad. Did you see that?
Right, right.
It's crazy, the smears they did against him.
Right, right. Because war isn't butchering.
Right. It's like, I talk about in my act how ISIS will cut your head off with a knife. They're barbarians. Why don't they blow your head off with a nice Christian bomb?
Right. I know. Chris Hedges said that more people have been decapitated by our drones and missiles and bombs than ISIS has ever done. And with Wisconsin, I was in Wisconsin after Clinton. She left before we had finished knocking on doors in Eau Claire.
Really?
So not to, too much, but I mean, come on, people also, they will say Russia is just running our government. They have no problem with multinational corporations running our government.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the people who are really influencing our government is, Goldman Sachs, Exxon, Eli Lilly, Raytheon.
Right.
Those are the people, and everyone knows it. Right. We know that we live in an oligarchy. People, even Hillary Clinton supporters, like Paul Krugman, will admit, yes, we live in an oligarchy.
Right.
And they don't go, so we have to get in the streets and change this tomorrow. They just go, well, that's it.
Right.
We live in an oligarchy, and so that's that. And now let's vote for the lesser of two evil and put on a pussy hat and deregulate Wall Street.
Right? Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. It's an oligarchy they can live with.
Yes.
They're comfortable enough. Trump brings it way too much to the fore. Glenn Greenwald said, Trump makes this country, it's visible what it does. He takes the mask off, much as Gina Haspel has done with what the CIA does, much as Netanyahu has done with what Israel does. It's not a friendly face or a comforting face.
Yes, like people say, you really don't think there's consequences to Trump being president? Now, Jeff Sessions is a racist who's the head of the Justice Department. And I'm like, guess what? We have a racist justice system in the United States.
Right.
Do you know that how blacks are overrepresented in our in our prison population, and nobody cares about that? Nobody. So it's apt that we have a racist at the head of our criminal justice system, because now we all know what it is.
Right.
Now we can all get together and fight against this racist criminal justice system instead of having a pretty boy like Eric Holder have his face on it, a black guy's face who seems like he gives a shit, which he doesn't. If he's the head of the Justice Department, you think, okay, well, they got it. Everything's handled, even though what they're doing is racist.
Right.
He's enabling a racist system. They didn't do anything to... Did they? Did you see anything that the Barack Obama administration did to lower our prison population? Well,
there's a great documentary called Do Not Resist. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's all about the militarization of the police. And there's Eric Holder, at these meetings when they're talking about sending, what are they called? Something cats, MRAPs? MRAPs.
Which are like tanks.
Yeah, to little sleepy towns of 4,000.
Like Ferguson.
Yeah, which of course were used in places like Ferguson, yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean... Yeah.
So going back to that point, it's like it's in a sense, Trump is the shock that's supposed to wake us up to all the horrible stuff our government's been doing all along. Mm-hmm. And you see how the Democrats go along with Trump, the worst of him. They just voted to deregulate Wall Street again. Yeah. That's the Democrats doing that. They just voted to increase our war budget by $80 billion a year. No discussion, no town hall meetings, no op-eds, nobody wringing their hands, no contentious debates with Ted Cruz and Bernie with Anderson, nothing. Right. They just did it like that. Right. That $80 billion, they said Bernie was crazy to think he could spend that on education. Right. What are you, nuts? We have to spend that on bombs that nobody wants. Right. Our next live Jimmy Dore show is July 1st in Portland, Oregon, and July 15th in Chicago, Illinois. We're doing a live show July 15th in Chicago, Illinois. Go to a link right there for all the tickets to all the live Jimmy Dore shows. Plus, if you can help become a premium member, we give you hours of bonus material every week. Become a patron or a premium member. And if you're on Steam It, we're steaming it right now. Plus, every Saturday, we do a live Super Solid Chat Saturday where it's a live stream and you can ask us questions and we'll answer them back. Every Saturday, 2 p.m. Pacific time. Thanks for your support.